Welcome, internet goers. Welcome, one and all. This is the Snipe here, and I have to ask a question about censorship. What is your opinion on it? Do you think everything has a right to be seen, heard, and shown? Everyone's expression, everyone's voice? Or do you think that some things should just be left locked away for us never to see? Now, to understand the idea of censorship and why it even happens, it's important to understand the things that make you yourself uncomfortable to watch. Such as, say, watching the movie Cannibal Holocaust, for instance. And if you've ever watched it, how did that movie make you feel with the blatant torture and cruelty to animals? The borderline, obscene, realistic way that death was portrayed in that movie. If you are well aware of Cannibal Holocaust, it's a movie that was banned in many countries. And even the creator of the film almost went to prison because of how realistic it looked. But, moving on to censorship. We've had issues with censorship in the past, I have to say at least 5 to 10 years involving the internet. Recently, there was the whole SOPA thing. There was another one too. I'm not really sure exactly what it was. But from what I gather within this past couple months or so, Anita Sarkeesian and Zoe Quinn have actually spoken at the UN involving censorship because they felt that it is the only way to keep people that criticize and harass them from doing so. But if that is what ends up happening, the internet being censored, is that something that we really need, or is that just crippling expressionists and crippling our freedom to say what we want to say and say how we feel and express ourselves? Because let's look at it like this. They're saying whatever they want to say. And while you may or may not agree with what they say, they are perfectly fine with saying what they want to say. And I think everyone should be. They might not agree with it, but they have the right to say so. That is freedom of speech and freedom of expression. This is what one of our main ideals of at least the United States is freedom of expression and freedom of speech. And if we take that away, if we censor the internet and police it, and if you make a comment or a video or something that says that you disagree with what people say and you debunk what they are trying to point out and you find their ideology to be flawed in some way and they take offense to it and they try to get your video banned or they try to actually press charges against you because it's in some way defacing their character in some way, or they view it as harassment. Is this something that we really need on the internet? I mean, the internet is still a vast and, in a sense, new and undiscovered place that I think almost everyone, and I mean by almost everyone, like 90% of the people don't even fully comprehend the internet in its entirety. Is that something we really need? Because at least I would think if everything was to be censored, if our way of thinking is not allowed, then no one's is. Because anything can offend anybody. The new radical feminist ideas is offensive to people. The whole issue with Gamergate is offensive to people. Anything involving race, religion, it's all offensive to people. I mean, even saying that you like the Wii U is offensive to people because it is for some reason. So, the bottom line is, do we need to tape everyone's mouth closed and say you can't say or do jack shit? This is something that we all really need to think about when it comes to censoring the internet, because this sounds extreme, but in a sense, this is something that could happen. I mean, we've come to a point where everything has to be politically correct, and if it isn't, that you're going to be publicly shamed for it. And if you're publicly shamed for it, I mean, isn't that considered harassment in a sense? To be shamed for your ideas and people sending you threats and people harassing you over your ideas that you don't agree with someone else's ideas. I have always thought that if you put yourself out there, that you are putting yourself right in view of being ridiculed in some way. And if you can't deal with that, maybe you shouldn't be in the public eye. Do I agree with sexism? No, not really. I mean, it happens. But in the same sentence, I can't tell someone that what they like, pending it be at least legal, but I can't tell someone that because they like a game like, oh god, I don't know, for example, Battletoads and Double Dragon, and, you know, because in level 3 you can punch a woman out and, like, grab her by her hair and fling her and shit, that, you know, you're a sexist because you like it. That's not how you should be tackling that subject. I mean, could it be handled better? Possibly. But if you try to take something like Battletoads or Double Dragon or even Bayonetta seriously, maybe the problem isn't with the content itself. Maybe it's how we perceive it to be. Some things we just shouldn't take all that seriously. And if you overthink things too much, then it just makes everything confusing and everything becomes a headache. And in the end, who really needs that? So, before you side with whatever side you want to, if you want to side with the feminists, if you want to side with people that are against the new feminism issue, or even involving any kind of minority, or any kind of something that is considered politically incorrect, consider this. What do you like? Obviously, you can't say you like nothing. Everyone has something that they like. You know, whether it be a TV show, whether it be a video game, whether it be a card game, whether it be music. And you have to ask, does this actually offend others? And if it does, if you like something and you acknowledge that yes, it is something that could be deemed offensive by other people in some way, shape, or form, but you are for censorship, then you're actually putting what you like at risk to be policed and to lose that right to express itself to the point where it won't even be what you loved it was. What I'm trying to say is, really think about what could happen if we live in a world where it's not okay to like anything. And yes, sure, there are some examples of things that are generally, there's nothing an issue with. But, I mean, pick anything. There's going to be problems with it. I mean, I can think of a handful of problems with professional wrestling and how women are portrayed in general. I can think of, you know, problems with various anime or various video games or just anything, in fact. But at the same time, if you, for example, I'm going to give you an episode I recently watched about Law and Order, not Criminal Intent, Special Victims Unit. And it actually dealt with the whole feminism in video games and whatnot. And they basically made the criminals, who were gamers, out to be a joke, that they were crazy. And, you know, some people can look at this and say, well, that's ridiculous. You know, who would really believe this? You know, because I mean, if you watch this episode, you know, they had no concept for reality whatsoever. However, if you scale back by almost 80 years, about 80 years, there was a movie that came out. I don't know what it was called then, but what it's called now is Reefer Madness. And it talked about how marijuana corrupts the youth and makes them crazy. And if you watch it now, it is ridiculous, it's silly, it's laughable with how people are portrayed after they smoke marijuana. But interesting fact, that was one of the factors that made marijuana illegal in the United States. That crazy, hokey little movie caused marijuana to be criminalized. Imagine what an episode of Law and Order can do if you look at Reefer Madness. Just think about that. As ridiculous as it is, if there's enough media that shows the negative effects of anything, and this goes beyond video games, okay? Because you could take it with, let's say the whole issue with Columbine that happened 15 years ago. You know, with kids playing certain games, or kids listening to music or watching movies, you know, how that can affect, say that, oh, well, they watch this or they listen to that. That's why. And what that ends up doing is making people think, well, maybe we shouldn't have them listen to this or that or whatnot. And, forget the parents. It's not the parents' fault. Never the parents' fault. Never society's fault of how these people were treated. They always try to find a scapegoat. And that's what they're doing now. And that's what they've always been doing. So, if Reefer Madness, as ridiculous it is, can make something illegal, it can still happen today. So, my final word about this is, if you really think that censorship should be allowed, you better be prepared to sacrifice at least some of what you like. And I guess in that same breath, you should find it wrong to like that in the first place. So, this was a long talk, and I'm going to end it right here. So, hopefully you have a lot to think about, and I'll see you again later. Till next time, folks.